In another major turn of events, the Trump administration has decided that any city, state, or county that plays host in being a sanctuary city will no longer receive any federal funds for homeless programs or housing. They've already comprised a list, which you can find on the Department of Justice website, and I'm going to read it all. There's a list of states and counties and so on. Now, there's a argument here to be made on both sides of the aisle, and I'm going to make that real quick. But before I do that, let's give you that list of states. As of now, the Trump administration will not give one single copper penny to the following states in terms of homelessness: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Illinois, Minnesota, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. Very specific cities: Albuquerque, Berkeley, California, Boston, Mass., Chicago, Illinois, Denver, Colorado, Los Angeles, California, New Orleans, Louisiana, New York City, New York, and New York, New Jersey, okay? And the list goes on, but I'm not going to read all that out. You can go look it up on the Department of Justice website. So the argument here is, I understand the argument in enforcing compliance of sanctuary cities, but homeless are homeless. And unfortunately, these policies do punish them to some degree. Maybe a better play in the book would be, instead of punishing the entire city for federal funding, why not just eliminate illegal aliens or any person that is actively engaged in crime, drugs, and alcohol from utilizing any type of federal dollars to house them, unless you can respectably show that you're recovering from these things, and you're not committing crimes, and you're not here illegally in the U.S., then that would free up half the program funding right there. This is a very large patch of the U.S. Not only that, but look, I'm in a Republican state, Texas. You don't think that the fourth and fifth largest cities aren't going to get hit by this? Houston and Dallas? I mean, there are sanctuary cities and counties, even in Republican states, okay? And Texas and Florida. If you don't think Florida, some of the cities in Florida won't get hit too. So, this is... We're trying to get compliance, but we're punishing the vulnerable in this. Look, a lot of homeless people, over half, are just families with children, veterans, and seniors. These are people that incidentally were living paycheck to paycheck, and through all this inflation and everything, one wrong thing happens, and then they end up temporarily on the street where they may not have family members to help them. And so we get our homeless numbers mostly from homeless shelters. Homeless shelters host people that are too scary to go live under a bridge or on Skid Row. Real homeless people don't represent as high a number, and it's much harder to calculate them than it is the real average homeless person that you may, on average, take about a year or two to recover. And so I don't know that this is that fair in terms of that. Now, forcing compliance on cities, there's lots of federal dollars that are sent for many things to states and cities from the federal government. I don't think it has to be just this. And if they remove the immigration aspect, if you can't prove you're legally here, that should have never been permitted to start with. If you've got a green card and you've earned the benefit of being in the U.S., then maybe that's the best way. Otherwise, you cannot receive federal dollars in a country where you're not part of the tax base. In other words, you can't benefit from that, okay? That doesn't work on any business structure. I understand we all want to have prayer circles and other things about this and be just, but look, business is business. If we don't operate this properly, then it fails, including the country. And so we can't just blow money people we don't know. This is, as I've explained in many videos, the United States is not a charity. If you're not legally here and you're compounding the waiting list for people that are actually American citizens, that's a fucking problem, okay? That's a big problem. So eliminating that. Also, if you're going to be a bad American and you're smoking from the crack pipe, you're sitting at the bar having whiskeys and living in a tent on the street, and you have no intent on contributing anything to society, then unfortunately you're not part of that tax base. You're part of the problem. And so if you're not going to cooperate, then you don't have any entitlement or right to utilize the program. Tax base is tax base. Those that pay in receive, those that don't. Look, when you go to Walmart, you think you're going to walk out of there without getting arrested if you don't pay for something? You pay your taxes, you get something. That's the option. We have to have compliance here. So I'm not arguing on the benefit of the Trump administration. I'm arguing on both sides of the aisle. And homeless people are both Democrats and Republicans, and so are their family members that are worried about them. I think that maybe this could be targeted a little bit better. This is kind of the brutal way of doing this. Let's take a look additionally at some additional cities that this is also going to roll out in. So, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Berkeley, California, Boston, Massachusetts, Chicago, Illinois, Denver, Colorado, Hoboken, New Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey, Los Angeles, New Orleans, New York, and San Francisco, San Diego, Cook County, and Baltimore. That's half the U.S. So, we need to think carefully about this, because if we become disingenuous and we only view what we learn from the news, what CNN and Fox News has to say about homelessness, then we only see the plight of the worst case scenario. That is not the picture of what most homeless people are. Most homeless people are families that are quietly and probably scared, hiding out in some shelter because they can't make it living on no street, no tent, or on the sidewalk. Okay? I think that the news has popularized this. So if we want to, I think we need better targeting on this, okay? So that's my argument. If we're going to force compliance, Trump knows that he funds lots of things through the government for every state, and so why not target something different that's a much larger amount that would be force compliance on these things if that's his wish. It doesn't mean that I personally agree with homeless encampment bans or cooperating with immigration or everything else that's going on. It just means that I'm subjectively bringing the topic to the public, and I want you guys to comment below. Even if you don't have anything nice to say, it's okay. I'm not going to cry about that. But, we have seniors, we have disabled, we have ordinary people that have not committed crimes. We've got people that are families that are not on drugs and alcohol, that are legal U.S. citizens, that are going to be wrapped up in this deal, and I think that's not as fair as it could be. Now, since homeless funding goes to Continuum of Care program, most of you don't know this, but not all Section 8 and vouchers go through the local housing authority. A lot of this for the homeless goes through what they call Continuum of Care program. They require an assessment where they ask questions to these people. And when they ask these questions, we could put that in and verify whether or not they're legal U.S. citizens. Get rid of that. That would free up about 30% of the space right there. Second to that, maybe drug, alcohol, and criminal checks to see whether or not we have people applying that are not actively participating or doing anything to help society.